Our speaker today is Walter Nusbaum. Walter has spent more than 10 years doing training and development with executives, business people, athletes, and nonprofit organizations. He has worked individually and corporately with executives from a broad spectrum of organizations such as Holly Frontier, Lockheed Martin, Buckeye Partners, and various others. His academic background is in strategic management and leadership development. As a growth strategist, as a talk screen, Walter focuses his time on the organizations to develop their human capital from the executive level to the frontline employee in order to help them successfully achieve their objectives. Walter is a popular speaker, has spoken all over the country to sports teams, business groups, corporations, as well as religious groups and other nonprofit organizations. He has taught, mentored, and coached dozens of executives through his life in executive coaching practice on topics such as team building, developing trust, communication skills, conflict management, and developing performance culture, as well as on faith and values. I personally know Walter for about a year now, and most of us who work for the refinery have met Walter at one time or another. How many welcome Walter Nusbaum with a big round of applause?
All right. Good afternoon. Good to be here with everybody. We've got some notes that we're going to pass out, so make sure everybody gets a copy of them, and we'll get started on that. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Today, I want to talk to you about a very, very important topic. You know, in all of my years of working with people at all levels of an organization and even on a personal level, one of the things that I have found as being a critical element of real success, achievement, and frankly happiness in life is the degree to which people have an ability to manage their emotions. Would you guys agree with that? The ability to control yourself, to not allow your environment to hijack you. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Right? And to have the ability to be really sober-minded and thoughtful, controlling some of the little quirks and things that all of us have a tendency to do. It's known in the literature, in the professional literature, it's known as having emotional intelligence. How many of you have heard that term before, emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence, everyone that meets with me one-on-one, by the way, raise their hand. Emotional intelligence is the principal driver of what truly makes somebody successful and happy in life in one major respect, and that is that I do not become dependent upon my circumstances for where my emotional life and my heart life goes. So I'm going to spend some time today talking to you about what the pillars are of emotional intelligence, and we're going to talk about things like self-awareness, self-management, and how to play well with others, if I can put it that way. When you think of people like, for instance, let me just throw some names out. You know, what do these people have in common? Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Mike Tyson, Michael Jackson, Lindsay Lohan, Britney Spears. What do they all have in common? What'd you say?
They like the spotlight.
They like the spotlight. Listen, they're all greatly talented. Is that right? Greatly talented, very proficient at what they did. But in every single instance, every one of them lacked the ability to control themselves. And as a result of that, their lives ended either abruptly through the taking of their own lives or just a lot of pain along the way. All of us who have friends and neighbors and kids, generally speaking, there's a relationship between the amount of trouble we get into in life and our inability to make choices to control ourselves. Would you guys agree with that? It's a very, very important skill. So on the notes, does everyone have a copy of it now? Good. There's a wonderful study. Let me read this definition. Self-awareness is the ability to understand one's emotions and behaviors and recognize their impact on others. In other words, being aware of how you come across to other people, and then having the ability to control it. One of my favorite studies I ever read was what's called the Stanford Marshmallow Study. Anybody ever read that study? The Stanford Marshmallow Study. A wonderful study. They took a large group of 4-year-olds. It was a longitudinal study, which meant they were going to follow these kids for 20 years. And they took these 4-year-olds, and they gave these 4-year-olds each one marshmallow. And they were in a room, and they told these kids, you're free to eat this marshmallow right now, or if you wait 15 minutes, which is how long to a 4-year-old, by the way? You may as well say if you wait 10 years, right? If you wait 15 minutes, when I come back, you can have a second marshmallow. And so they had a one-way mirror, and they're videotaping these kids, right? And when you read the study, it's absolutely comical when you begin to see what these kids were doing to resist eating these marshmallows. I mean, they were sitting on their hands, they were hiding under the desks, they were covering their faces up with their arms. You know, some of them were like, just taking a hit of mushroom, or marshmallow. Sorry, not mushroom, marshmallow. Sorry, that's a different group I'm talking to later. Sorry, that's the jail. I'm kidding. So, yeah, they're like sniffing this marshmallow and all of these things. Well, what they did is they followed the kids that resisted, which was just a small percentage of them. The great majority of them, including me had I been in there, ate the marshmallow, or at least took a bite of the marshmallow, right? How many of you here think you probably would have succumbed and taken a bite of that marshmallow at 4 years of age? How many of you think how many of you say, no way, I wouldn't have done it? You liars, bunch of liars. I'm changing my topic right now. We're going to talk about integrity and honesty today. So, what they did is they took these kids and they followed them for the next 20 years, the ones that resisted. And amazingly, on every index, every criteria that they measured, these kids outperformed the rest of the kids. Their SAT scores on average were 200 points higher. Their disciplinary issues were virtually non-existent compared to the other kids. The colleges that they got into were a whole tier better than the colleges that the other kids got into. And on and on and on. It was very, very interesting to see that. And what the Stanford study was really trying to show was that is the power of self-management and self-control. Y'all with me? The ability to control yourself, to make the decisions that you know are the right and the important decisions, and not simply to give in to what I feel. But before you can get there, you've got to be very aware of what are your issues. What are the things that all of us do, say, or come across as that we need to become more aware of? I'll tell you a funny story about self-awareness. So one of my best friends, his name is Christopher. Christopher is a guy that if you met him, he is your typical type A. He's actually type AAA. Very type A guy. And he's not he's not a huggy guy, right? He's not one of those guys. He keeps his distance from everybody, but he's one of my best friends. We just have always kind of had a great relationship. So one night we went to Outback and had dinner, and when we got done, my personality is one that's very engaging. My mother is Greek. We grew up overseas. So we kissed on both cheeks growing up. Very affectionate, very loving. So to me, I've got no problem, when I talk to people, I've got no problem being right here, right? To me, that's just connecting with somebody, right? So one day, Chris and I are walking out of Outback, and we're standing right outside the front doors. And as we're talking, Chris, and I don't even notice this, Chris has got his arms folded because that's what AAAs do, arms folded, and he just kind of takes a step back. And he's like leaning back because apparently I'm too close, which I was unaware of. And so I just very naturally, he took a step back. What did I do? I just kind of casually took a step forward. I'm like, hey, dude, man, that was great. We're going to do this again, right? And so he takes another step back, right? And I just take a step forward. And now we're just, kind of doing this bit. And no lie, in 5 minutes, we had migrated 15 feet from where we were. And the reason I know that is because Chris finally was so upset. He snapped. And he takes his hands and he shoves me. And he goes, dude, get off of me. I said, and I still had no idea what he was talking about. I said, what? He said, bro, we were by that rock 5 minutes ago. And sure enough, there's this big sandstone rock right outside the door, right? And we're 15 feet from the rock. He was right. And it hit me. I went, we were. He said, bro, I've been backing up for 5 minutes and you keep crowding me. And then he said, dude, you always do that. Right? And obviously I was a little bit embarrassed, right? I said, man, I had no idea. I didn't know this. Yeah, God, you just got to stop. I said, okay, I get it, right? So that was, 12 years ago? Yeah, let's see, I'm 29 today, so that was when I was 7. Why is that the biggest laugh so far? That's rude. We're changing topics again. So I was 31 years old back then, about 12 years ago. And so the first thought that went in my mind, what do you think it was? I'm 31 when he tells me this. What do you think went through my mind? How long? I knew the answer to that already. That was since birth I've been doing that, right? I thought, why didn't anybody ever say something to me about that before, right? Why has nobody, and I've got great friends, why has nobody ever said that to me before? And ever since that day, no lie, I am so aware of my proximity to people when I meet them or when I talk to them, that I keep a very healthy distance from everybody. Do you think I'm glad that Christopher told me that? You bet I am. You think it felt good when he told me that? Heck no, it didn't. It kind of stung. In fact, he needs some communication coaching himself on how to give constructive criticism. But I can honestly say it impacted my life for the better because he was honest. And here's the caveat. He and I had already developed a relationship of trust where he felt safe enough to be able to say that to me. Now, obviously he snapped and got angry, but he felt the freedom still in that because he knew that I wasn't going to walk away from a friendship that I really treasured, right? I'll give you another example. So I'm walking out of grad school one day, one of my classes, and a buddy of mine, his name is Mark Wyatt. He and I are walking out of class. Now, I used to have this, I'm just telling on myself to you guys right now, okay? I used to have this other bad habit. And my other bad habit was every time I would end a conversation, if I wanted to transition away from talking to someone, right, like you or Pam. So if I'm done talking to Pam, I'd be like, Pam, good to see you. Hey, I'll give you a call. Right? Hey, I'll give you a call. Hey, I'll call you. Hey, and the only problem was what? I didn't call anybody. Right? It was just my way of kind of transitioning out. Hey, good to see you. Hey, I'll give you a call. So Mark and I were walking out of class one day, and as we're walking, I said, hey, Mark, a bunch of us are going country dancing tonight. Man, you ought to go. And he goes, really, where are y'all going? And I said, I think we're going to Red River. I don't know, but I'll what? I'll give you a call. So that night, a bunch of us went country dancing, but not Mark, because I didn't call him. So the next day, Mark is walking out of class with Royce, who happened to go dancing with us the night before. And as they're talking, Royce says to Mark, hey, a bunch of us went dancing last night. You should go with us sometime. And Mark says, well, I was going to go, but Walter was going to call me. And he said, well, Walt was there. Thank you, Royce. So Mark then gets on the phone. Now, this is before people had cell phones everywhere. He calls me and leaves me a message on my answering machine. For you youngsters, that's a little box that used to hold messages. So this is the message she left me. I still remember it like it was yesterday. And now remember, Mark was probably, I'd say, one of my top 5 closest friends at that time also. And Mark says this, Walter, this is Mark. He said, hey, listen, I just want you to know, I don't think you're a man of integrity. I don't think you're a man of your word. And I frankly don't have any desire to continue a friendship with somebody that treats friends the way you do. You've told me so many times you would call me and you never do. And so I just wanted you to know I have no desire to continue this friendship like this. If you want to call me, that's fine. Otherwise, don't worry about it. That was it. I was stunned, right? Now, if I decided to react in, let's say, a less than mature way to that message, kind of in a negative way, what might be one thing I might have done? What's a typical response somebody might have that might not be a very constructive or mature response? What do you think?
Walk away from it.
What's that?
Call him back and show him it.
Yeah, call him back and just let him have it, right? Oh yeah, dude, you know what you do? Right? And throw something back at him, right? I could have done that. What else could I have done? I could have ignored him and said, hey, I don't need him as a friend. If that's the way he's going to be, fine. I don't care. I got lots of friends, I think, right? I could have done a number of things, right? But I called him because I valued the feedback, because I knew what he said. As soon as he said that, I knew he was right. And I called him up, and I apologized profusely to him. And I can honestly say this. Again, that was about 12, 13 years ago. Ever since that day, I can't think of an occasion that I've told somebody, I'll give you a call, when I did not, in fact, give them a call. It has fundamentally changed my behavior because he spoke so honestly with me about something that was a character defect in me. Right? Y'all with me? You think I'm glad Mark Wyatt left me that kind of a message? Yes, I am. Because it changed me and it made me a better man as a result of that, see? And those are those things, to have somebody have the ability to come to you and just share honestly something about you and to not be defensive. It's almost always the initial response, isn't it? To get defensive, to get angry, to shut down, to play the silent treatment. Well, I'm not talking to you. And I'm going to punish you for like 3 days and not talk to you because I didn't like what you said to me, right? I know that doesn't happen in this group, but there's people out there that do that. That's a joke. Okay. We've got to be people that can hear feedback from people. And whether we agree with all of it or not, we've got to be able to hear it, evaluate it, and be appreciative that someone would share something with us that could potentially be to our benefit. Is that true? I think I'm right. That's how we grow, see? Because all of us, from 6 to 60, 80, it doesn't matter. All of us have blind spots. All of us have things, the way that we carry ourselves, the way that we talk, the way that we jest, the way that we look, the nonverbals that we give across. All of us have those things that we have no idea sometimes how they can affect and impact the people around us, see? And that's what you call the power of self-awareness. And there's no better way to become self-aware than to have somebody outside you say, can I share some things with you? Right? And for them not to feel like they're walking on eggshells, like they're afraid of your response. Right? That they're afraid and intimidated by your response, or because they don't want you to suddenly give them the silent treatment for 48 hours because they made you mad. See, that game has got to stop. That is not how you grow. That is not how you develop. You wouldn't teach your kids to do that. And so why in the world would any of us want to do the same thing? I got a phone call from a guy named Bob one day. Bob was promoted to an executive level position at this company in Dallas. And the board that promoted him gave him my name and said, we want you to call this guy. He's a coach. And we want you to get him to help you develop more confidence. See, Bob was a guy that was really, really smart, very analytical, but he lacked a lot of kind of presence and a lot of confidence with people. And their fear was that as Bob moved up to that next level, he wouldn't demand the respect from the people underneath him that he had worked with for so many years. So he calls me up and he introduces himself to me and he says, "My name is Bob. I've been recently promoted and the board says I need to work on developing my confidence more. Can we meet? I heard that you might be able to help me." And I said, "You bet." So Bob and I told him I wanted to meet him at a Starbucks, kind of in a public setting. So I meet Bob at a Starbucks, and this is such a funny story. So Bob, I get there a little bit early, and I know what Bob's, he told me, he described himself to me, and I'm looking for him. And so when I see Bob come in, I raise my hand, and no lie, Bob walks over to me like this. Okay? And he puts his hand and he goes, "Hi, I'm Bob." And I said, "Hey, Bob." I said, "Bob, can we do this all over again?" And he said, "Do what?" And I said, "I want you to go back outside and I want you to come in all over again." And he said, You do?" I went, "Yes." So this time though, I want you to kind of pick your head up a little bit. I want you just to put your shoulders back a little bit. And I said, I want you to open the door a little more assertively. And when I put my hand up, I want you to kind of march more to me. And I said, I want you to put your left foot out, put your hand, I say, "Hi, I'm Bob." And he goes, "You're kidding." I said, "No." And he goes, "Okay." And Bob takes the longest walk of his life back out to Starbucks, right? So Bob goes outside, and I love Bob. So Bob does, this bit, right? Shoulders back. No lie. Shoulders, it looks like a Gomer Pyle, right? That's how he is right here, right? And he kind of marches, and he gets to me and he goes, "Hi, I'm Bob." Right? It sounded just like Biff on Back to the Future. Remember that? Or McFly. Right? McFly. So I said, "Bob," I said, "Nice to meet you. Have a seat." So he sits down, and I said, "How'd that feel?" He goes, "Horrible. I felt like an idiot." And I said, "Good. That's what it's going to take, Bob. To make changes is going to be uncomfortable. And I'm not saying that you're going to have to do that, but you're going to have to do some things that feel uncomfortable if you want to change and if you want to grow. No one grows in anything they do that does not feel uncomfortable and that does not create tension in your life. Isn't that true? Anybody that works out that never breaks a sweat, you know what that's called? Not working out. Okay? Anything you do, if you want to see results, it's going to require effort. So I told Bob, I said, "Bob, let me tell you how this is going to work, and you let me know if you want to do this. We're going to meet 10 times. Each time we meet, we're going to meet in a public setting, and you're going to go introduce yourself to some stranger wherever we are. And we're going to talk about how to do that." And I mean, you would have thought I said, "And you're going to get a gun and you're going to shoot somebody in the head." Right? I may as well have said that to him. He was ghost white, scared to death, this grown man, scared to death that he would have to go and meet some stranger he's never met before. And the next meeting we had was at Snuffers Hamburgers in Dallas. And so I said, "Okay, Bob," I said, "we're going to have lunch, and we're going to kind of go over some stuff together. But sometime over the course of this lunch, you've got to find somebody walking around, and you got to go introduce yourself to them." And he goes, how do I do that? Right? And I said, find some kind of common ground. Maybe it's a guy with a ball cap. Maybe it's an OU ball cap. It's a U, do something. Find something that you can go to somebody and say, "Oh, hey, did you go to school there?" Right? So I'm kind of helping him. How do you create that common ground? And do you know that Bob made it through all 10 sessions? And when he got through that training, that time together, there was a part of Bob that, I'm telling you, there was just a fire in him. He felt stronger. He felt competent. He felt confident. Do you think it was easy? No. Do you think it was easy for him to hear me pointing things out to him? Everything from his posture, to the way he looks, to his voice, to his fish handshake, right? Everything about him projected something that's just the opposite of what he wanted. And he heard it all. And to his credit, Bob's probably one of the biggest turnaround examples that I've worked with, because he was absolutely committed to improve it. Y'all with me? That's what it means to be open to self-awareness, right? I want you to do this for a second. You should have a pen on the table and your sheet of paper. I want you to just, on the back of the sheet of paper, I want you to write down, for you personally, what's the one thing for you that you know you need to work on? How self-aware are you? How quickly can you put an answer down that you know for a fact, this is something that I absolutely need to work on? And if you're not quick with it, don't feel bad. Most aren't. Most people really have to think a while because they're not really sure. But what would that be for you? What would be that for you? And then once you write that down, if you write that down, I want you to share it with all your... I'm kidding. What I want you to do is, I want you to think about a time that has anybody come to you and done for you what they've done for me? Has anybody ever pointed out something about you that maybe you weren't completely aware of that really helped impact you and change you for the better, even if it wasn't easy to hear? Now, I told on me a little bit. Does anybody here have an example you want to share? You have one? What was it?
A friend of mine, a coworker, we went to a ball game and I made a remark and I thought it was funny and it hurt his feelings. And I didn't know it at the time. I was like, oh, maybe I hurt his feelings. And so the next day at work, he came to me and he was like, hey, can we talk for a minute? And he was like, what you said I didn't think was right. And he goes, I know you meant it to be funny, but I took it a little more seriously. And so I apologized, and now we're friends again, but it really hurt his feelings, and I didn't mean it that way. So.
Yeah, that's a great example, and I'm assuming you probably have been very careful with that kind of a joke in the future. Yeah, absolutely. Good, that's great. Yeah, that's a good example of something, and good for him, feeling like you were the type of person he could come to and not be necessarily afraid, right? That's a terrific example. Anyone have another example you want to share? That's good. Yes.
Well, our corporation had a consultant to provide cancer.
Nice.
So, they said I struggled with it as a supervisor and working with other people was they didn't always feel comfortable coming to see me and asking me for help or questions. And so, it was a suggestion that I learn to smile a little bit more with people and then I feel more valued.
Terrific. That's good. Whoever that was, pay him double. That's awesome. That's good. It's funny. There is one of my clients that I have in another city. There is a lady in this group, and if you saw her, you would think that someone had just killed her dog. I mean, everything about her just looks sad and down, and when she walks, her eyes are always down, and she kind of shuffle steps, but she's not an unhappy person. She's actually a fairly joyful person, but all of her countenance, everything about her looks upset, and everybody feels really uncomfortable around her because they're not quite sure, is she in a good mood or a bad mood today? Right? And so we were talking one day, and she was just sharing with me how she feels so disconnected from so many people. She's been there for 15 years, and she just feels like she hasn't developed close relationships, and she just doesn't understand why. Right? And I said, can I tell you? I said, listen, I don't know if you realize this or not, but I've known you for about a year now, and do you know that you never smile? Like you never smile. And you never look up when you walk, and you never stop and make eye contact with people and engage them. And I said, you're so in your own world that you need to start smiling more. You need to start engaging people more. And no lie, she began to do that. Like, she laughs out loud now in the workplace. And it's just, I love it when I see her laughing. In fact, I was there a couple of weeks ago, and I walked into their area, and she's there with two coworkers, and I mean, she is laughing. And I went over there and just kind of put my arm around her and said, I love that about you. And she is just enjoying work so much more because she is so much more connected to the people with her. See, you think she's glad I said that to her? You think that felt good? No, it didn't feel good. It's sometimes hard to hear, isn't it? One of my clients, another wonderful person. However, they are like a fire hydrant when you talk to them. You can't get a word in edgewise. So we would have these 55-minute coaching sessions, right? And I'm not exaggerating. 49 of the 55 minutes is her talking. 49 of the 55. I get about 6 minutes in there, right? And I mean, it's the one, I would probably say, of all the stuff, all the people I've worked with, and she's a neat lady, but of all the people I've worked with, she's the one that did this to my hair. There was times that and I've never heard the pronoun I more times in conversation than when I talked to her. And I said this, and I told him that, and I told him this, and I went there, and I said, I told you so, and I did, and I did. Just I, right? Constantly. So I went through this for about 3 months, right, of just getting out there for about 3 months. And finally, I decided to throw her what I call my 4Q rule, right? My 4Q, now this is free, but go ahead and write it down, all right? The 4Q, it's a great one. Try this sometime. I said, hey, listen, I want you to do what I call the 4Q rule tomorrow. She goes, what's that? And I said, the 4Q rule is where you're not allowed to let anybody leave a conversation with you until you've asked them what? 4 questions. And I said, I'll even give you, how are you? Okay? Now you get to follow it up with 3 more. And she said, quote, that's it? I went, that's it. Just 4 questions. So that was it. Next day, I go into their office to see how it went, and she says, quote, oh my goodness, that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I said, was it? Right? Like I was shocked. I said, was it? She said, yes. She said, Walter, why was that so hard for me? And I said, are you ready? She said, is this going to hurt? I said, yes. And I said, because I said, this is what I said, you're a wonderful person. Okay, there's that Oreo, right? Say it good, say it bad, say it good. You're a wonderful person, but you are a terrible listener. You're a bad conversationalist, but I know you mean well. Right? I mean, we're talking tears, right? Because she prided herself. She's such a expressive type person. She always felt like she was awesome with people. But nobody thought the same thing because no one wanted to go in her office. Why? Because they would never get out. Right? It's like the black hole you get sucked into and you can't get out. Right? And so we began, and so she says, do you really think that's a problem I have? I went, yes. Like a big problem. You've got to start asking questions, and then you've got to start listening for answers. And here's the big thing, ready? Now I'm also saying this because there might be somebody in here that's the same way. And you've got to stop using what other people say as a springboard for you to start talking about yourself again. Someone says, oh, we went to Disney World last weekend. Oh my gosh, I love Disney World. Okay? And we stayed at Universal Studios Hotel. Oh my gosh, I've been there. You know, when we went there, right, you know that person? Every time you say something, it's called self-reflective communication. It's where you say something and I take it and I acknowledge it and bring it back to me, right? Listen, that's something people have got to be self-aware of. Because what you end up doing is you end up basically taking over every conversation talking about yourself. See? Here's what it ought to look like. No way, you went to Disney World? That's awesome. Where did you stay? We stayed at the Universal Studios Hotel. How fun! Who all went? Oh, I went with my husband and my kids. Oh my gosh, was it their first time? Yes, it was their first time. What did they think? Y'all going to go back again? Now, what's that called? That's called like sharing real interest and communication and asking multiple questions. And here's what this lady said that I was working with. She said, I would try to do these 4 questions, and what she found was she was asking questions that were completely unrelated to each other. Because while the person was answering that question, what is she doing? She's thinking of the next question, right? And it was like the most fragmented conversations. You know they hadn't been thinking of, what's wrong with you today, right? And what she had to learn is you have to actually listen to the answer and then actually ask another question about what they just said and have a deeper conversation, right? And then at times you self-disclose, right? You know, my family, we went there once, and give them a chance to do what now? Yeah, no kidding, where did y'all stay? Now that's a great conversation. You know, I'm going to write a book someday, and it's going to be called 2 Monologues Don't Equal a Dialogue. Because that's oftentimes what you have, is 2 people speaking right at each other, basically using each other's statements as springboards to talk about what they want to talk about, right? Listen, check it out for yourself sometime. The tendency is very easy to fall into that pattern, isn't it? It's not easy to have sustained good conversations because it takes work. You have to think, you have to be engaged, you have to care, you've got to ask questions, see? It's an issue of self-awareness. Half the battle is kind of catching yourself in it, isn't it? Right? So it can be a variety of things. It can be that, you know what, you don't talk very much and people don't really know what you think. You know, it doesn't have to just be that you talk too much. It might be you don't talk enough. You know, or it could be something like, sometimes you have this tone, right? You have this tone. And the tone can be a kind of a condescending tone, right? I'm thinking of a gentleman in Dallas. And I'm meeting with him, and he doesn't even realize it. But for whatever reason, when he speaks, his tone declines, just very naturally when he speaks. Oh. I mean, how'd that sound?
Bad.
Bad, right? That's why you did that. Right? And he has this habit, and sometimes it's really, really bad. And I said, hey, what do you think is your probably biggest issue of communication that you got to work on? And he said, honestly, I don't know. Is it clarity? I mean, do I need to be more clear? I'm like, no, you're pretty clear. And he said, you know, Walter, I really don't know. And I said, okay, I'm gonna share something with you. And just don't take my word for it. I want you just to see if you can kind of self-experience it when you're talking to people. But when you speak, the majority of your sentences are in a declining tone. And you sound either condescending or kind of disappointed in what people say or do. And he says, really? I went, yes. Well, sure enough, about a week goes by and he sends me this email. And he says, I cannot believe no one has ever told me that before. He said, I asked my wife that question, and I asked some good friends, and they all said that you're right. And I asked them, why didn't they ever say something to me? And guess what the answer was? It's the number one answer. What is it? Didn't want to hurt my feelings. Right? So I called them. I said, hey, I got your email. I said, let me ask you a question real quick. When they said that they didn't want to hurt your feelings, what did you say back to them? What would you have said back to somebody that didn't tell you something that you would have wanted to hear because they didn't want to hurt your feelings? What would you have said to them?
I wished you would have told me anyway.
Yes.
You had a good friendship that you would tell me.
Absolutely. You'd say, hurt my feelings. Tell me. Let me be responsible for my feelings. Don't you be responsible for my feelings. That sounds too therapy-like, but, right? I'll be responsible for me, all right? But if we're friends, you tell me something that I need to hear, and let me be responsible for what I do with it. See? That's essentially what he wanted to tell them is, you have to tell him, you know, he's 54 years old, and he's been doing this for who knows how long. 54 years, well, 52 years, right? He just picked up this thing. So there's hundreds of these things in terms of self-awareness that all of us need to make ourselves, you know, available to be spoken to. Now, here's a great challenge. A few years ago, I did this because I really am, you know, when it comes to me having my pride, hurt, and all that. I really am past that. I want to do nothing but improve as a human being and as a man. So I am completely open to feedback from people. Even if I disagree with it, I don't care. I want to hear the feedback. So a couple years ago, I wrote one question on a sheet of paper, and it was, what one thing, in your opinion, could I do to continue to improve as a person? And I made 15 copies, and I folded it up and put it in envelopes, and I gave it to 15 people that I trusted would be honest with me. And I got 15 back. Within about 30 days, I got 15 of them back. And I began to go through these. And you know, there was one on there that was a theme. I wasn't looking for all of them because everyone has differences of opinions. What I was looking for was a theme, right? Were there 4 or 5 or even 3 of the same comments that I need to pay attention to, right? That's what I was looking for. And there was one. There was one. And that was that I have a tendency to be anywhere between 3 to 5 or 6 minutes late, or when I run around, because a lot of times I'm too optimistic. Okay, I got to go 48 miles, and if there's no traffic lights in the city, and there's no traffic accidents, and if the moon is in the right spot and the sun is tilted the right way, I can get there right on time. Come on, baby, right? Throw them dice. That was always my mindset, right? Or it was, okay, wait a minute. My watch says this. Most people's watches are off between 1 to 3 minutes, so I can err on the 3-minute side, right? And there's a couple right there, right? What's that called, by the way? Rationalization, right? Absolutely. So I get this, and one of the things that I determined to do is I knew that I would not become perfect, but I'm a whole lot better. And what I was not going to do is make a bunch of lame reasons, right? Like, oh my gosh, there was so much traffic on I-35. As if it hasn't been there for the last 50 years, right? You wouldn't believe it. I'm on 35 at 7:30 in the morning, and there's traffic. Right? It's just silly, right? It's just silly. And that's something for some that you got to be aware of. Right? You just have to be aware of it. How you speak. Maybe for some of you it's this. Maybe if somebody said to you, do you know that in all the time I've known you, you never ever really give me any praise or recognition. I never feel encouraged by you. I just don't feel like whenever I'm around you that you really communicate that you really care. Right? Or whatever. We could fill in the blanks on all of these things. See, all of those things have to do with this idea of self-awareness. Make yourself available to people just to be honest with you. If you look at your notes, I gave you 5 core areas of self-awareness. Okay, these are the 5 areas for you to think about. Okay, number 1, and I even put it in an acronym. How creative is that? I spelled the word aware, huh? How's that? Pretty good? It took me 6 hours to come up with that acronym. The first one is self-awareness in the areas of your attitude. Now, on a spectrum from one side to the other, your attitude can be everywhere from draining to energizing. And you're going to fall somewhere on that spectrum. That when people are around you, it's draining, or when people are around you, they are energized and they feel good and they're encouraged, right? And the ability to be the type of person that can give off a vibe and an energy that's positive and encouraging is very, very important, especially in your work life because of the people that you work with. How positive is your energy? Or, let me put it this way, when you're around people, how much do you bring negative energy into conversations? Talking about other people, criticizing things that you have no control over, complaining and complaining and complaining about things that there's no business in complaining about because nothing is going to change. See? Do you think that that's energizing or do you think that that's draining? It's draining. See, and it does no good. We call it venting, right? But hey, I get that. We're human beings. I get having 1 or 2 people that you know well enough that you can do that with. But I'm talking about the person that's the chronic complainer about everything around them, see? It's that attitude that they've got to really become more aware of. Or secondly, your words. On a spectrum, your words are either destructive because they're critical, or they are constructive. You build people up. When people are around you, they feel good because you're lifting them up. You're able to offer people something that makes them feel hope and good and positive about certain things. Thirdly, it's your actions. Everything from self-serving to supportive. See? How much do I act outside of myself to be supportive of the people around me or of my work environment? It's the little things. What am I doing? Am I doing the little things? I'll tell you one of the other studies, it's one of my favorite. This research company went to about a dozen different companies, and they went to their busiest hallways, and they took a piece of paper like this, and they crumpled it up, right, into a ball. And what they did is they put it up against the wall, okay, of the hallway. So if this was the hallway, it's not even in my way, right? It's over here. And as I'm walking, it's up against the wall. And they put a researcher at every one of these sites to count how many people walked past that piece of paper. You know what the average number was? 19 pass-bys. 19 people walked right past it until somebody finally went over there, picked it up, right, to throw it away. The person that picked it up was the person that the researcher pulled aside. And they pulled every person that picked up the piece of paper, they asked them this question. A whole bunch of people walked past that piece of paper, but you picked it up. Why did you pick it up? You know what what'd you say? Because they're type A, that's right. This is what, you're ruining my story. No, I'm kidding. You know what the most common answer was from everybody that picked up the piece of paper? They said this is my workplace. Not this is my office, right? Or this is my desk, right? This is my workplace, right? That's my hallway. And if there's a piece of paper over there, that's just like that piece of paper was sitting in the middle of my office. Would I pick it up if it's in my office? You bet I would. Why? Because it's my office. Well, that's your hallway. Oh, it is? Yes! See? Acting in my own self-interest means I'll pick it up in my office, but I'm not going to pick it up in the hallway. See? That's supportive. Right, that's going outside of what I believe is my responsibility. Y'all with me? That's the idea there. How much do we go outside of ourselves? Little things that go a long way in terms of our actions. I was at an airport one day, and I got through whatever, and I was washing my hands, and there was a man at the sink right next to me, and he was in a really nice suit. And he's washing his hands, and he gets the paper towels, and he begins to kind of wipe down the sink around him. And I looked at him, and I just kind of cracked a joke, because that's what I do. And I said, "You been working here long?" "Yeah, right? Kind of fun, right?" Ha ha. And he looks at me, and he kind of cracks a smile, and he says, "You know, it's not a bad idea to leave things a little better than how you found them." Okay, so now I feel like this, right? And he throws away his paper towels, and he just walks out. So, you know, I'm kind of sitting there at the sink, right? Kind of washing my hands. I go and I get these paper towels, right? And I dry my hands. And I literally could not throw them away. Like, I wanted to throw them away, but I couldn't. So I go over to the sink, and I wipe down my sink, right? Looking around, right? I don't work here, right? Just kind of wiping down the sink. And I threw it. That was 4 years ago. Do you know, and I think I could say this 100% true. Do you know that since that day, there has never been a public sink I've not wiped down if I've used paper towels? Ever. Every time I get paper towels, and I'm not type A. I am type triple B, okay? And I wipe down every sink and the fixtures, and here's what's funny. What's funny now is I'll do it kind of a little bit more dramatically now, right? I'm just kind of wiping it down, right? And I will, as I'm walking out, I love like looking over my shoulder at other guys, and I will see every once in a while somebody take their towels, and they'll kind of wipe, they'll be wiping down the sink a little bit. Isn't that awesome? So cool, right? Little things, my actions that have all the ability to affect the people around me. If I recognize that little things matter, and little things over time, done by many people, become what? Big things. See, that's the idea. How aware am I of that? My attitude, my words, my actions, my reactions, right? I'm either defensive all the way to reflective. You know what I mean by reflective? Somebody says something and I take the time to really reflect. No matter what they said or how they said it, I take the time and I reflect. Why do I feel this? Why do I feel anger? Why do I feel like I want to rip their throat out right now? I'm kidding. But reflective, you just start thinking about why am I feeling these things right now, right? As opposed to reactive, which is I don't take any time to think. What do? I just act, right? What? How could you do that? Right? And listen, way too many of us are reactive. We don't have any time lag between what somebody says or does and time to think and consider our response and talk to ourselves, see? Because we're too busy reacting to what just happened. We've got to be aware of that. How reactive are you? Finally, emotions. Everything from volatile to controlled. Where am I on the spectrum of volatility, right, where my emotions can be all over the place, all the way to controlled, right? And where am I? How aware am I of that? Now, all of those things right there all lead to the same thing, and that is they lead to opportunities for self-management, the ability to control myself. Okay, we're almost done with the talk part of this. Now I want to take some questions or comments from you guys as well. One of my favorite people that I love, that I've enjoyed reading about, is a man named Viktor Frankl. Has anybody ever heard of Viktor Frankl? Viktor Frankl was an Austrian psychologist. When he was 30 or 32 years old, he was already a published psychologist in Austria, and he ended up getting taken by the Nazis. And he went to not just a concentration camp, he was in a death camp. And he was there for almost 4 years. And he watched the horrors of all that went on in these Nazi concentration and death camps. And he survived. And when he came out, he began writing about his experiences. And he says something that I thought was very, very profound. He said there was basically three classes of people that experienced the concentration camps. The first class was the person who couldn't take it anymore and took their own lives in the camp. It was just, the pain was too great. And they either took their own lives or they just quit eating out of depression and just died. Their systems just gave out. He said soldiers would go around, and they could see it in their eyes if you were that person, and soldiers would have backpacks full of nooses that they made, and they would laugh, and they would look at you, and they would just throw a noose on the ground and laugh and not even say anything and walk off, because they knew what? They knew that you would take it, and they laughed. Just the horrors of that. Those people didn't make it. Another class of persons survived the camps physically, but when they tried to reintegrate into Europe, they couldn't do it. They became homeless. They got admitted to psychiatric wards, treatment centers. They became addicted to all kinds of things. They could not function in a civilized society any longer because they were fractured, right? But there was a third class of people that Frankl was fascinated by. And that was the group of people who came out of the camps and became the most successful lawyers and doctors and writers and artists and musicians and Nobel Prize winners, right? I mean, if you look at the Nobel Prize laureate list, since 1945, you would be amazed to see how many people come from the Jewish heritage that were directly connected to the camps. And one of the things that Viktor Frankl said was that the difference between those people and everyone else was that they had what he called an embedded, resilient spirit. That they were able to not let their environment define them. They were able to not let soldiers define them. There was something in them that stayed alive, that they were in control of their actions and their emotional life to such a degree that they survived and then thrived. And it's that spirit. None of us here have gone through anything remotely like a concentration camp. Yet, all of us do experience the pressures of life. Is that true? And we see and we experience all kinds of things in our lives that we've got to learn to build resilience to. And that includes dealing with the people in your life. Dealing sometimes with the difficult people in your life. And learning to become more self-aware and learning to manage yourself in a much more effective way. See, that's the key. If there's one lesson I could teach kids today, it would be the ability to manage and control yourself in the presence of a stressful, intense-filled environment. Would you guys agree with that? That is one of the big keys to really succeeding and achieving, is learning to control thyself. You've got to, like Socrates said, know thyself, and then you've got to control thyself. Well, you may have some questions or some comments or thoughts about some of this that we want to give you guys some time for. Any comments or questions, first of all, in general? I know that first one's always tough. Could be about maybe a specific experience that you're going through. Yeah.
I think tone is so tricky. You know what I mean? Coming across, and I don't really know how you fix that. But it seems like people get their feathers ruffled really easily. Like you send a text or an email, or I witnessed it even like on Facebook. These huge like arguments break up. You know, it's all people say I'm sorry, but that's not good enough for doing that. And it's like really.
Yeah. So a couple things. That's great. What's your first name?
Brandy.
What?
Brandy.
Brandy. Okay, Brandy. That's a great point. So you used a phrase in there, Brandy, that I want to talk about. Okay, so Brandy's your point's well taken, but this doesn't sound good. Are you ready? Okay. So Brandy says, in the way she formulated that, right? She says, and a lot of people get their feathers all ruffled. Okay. When I use that phrase, what I'm basically assuming in that is that people shouldn't be sensitive, right? I know it's not what you meant. But within that, when someone gets their feathers ruffled, we're saying you're too sensitive. But people are sensitive. So the responsibility, I can either live life and say this, quit being so sensitive. Or I could live life saying what? What do I need to do when I'm talking to Pam, because I know she's sensitive, to not ruffle her feathers? Now, which of the two ways do you think is a more effective way of doing life? Probably the second one, right? What's that? Yeah, my way. Okay, good. We got that settled. All right. Okay, good. I'm right again. Okay. Anyone else? No. But you are right. When it comes to, for instance, written communication, who here loves the exclamation point when you text? Like, you use it pretty regularly. Yeah. Now, how many of you, when you see an exclamation point, can actually hear that as almost like yelling sometimes? One. Okay, so we have one person that gets their feathers ruffled. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. You need to not be that way. Okay. You are. Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, my sister-in-law, it's funny, she was running late one time to drop her daughters off with me. I was going to spend the day with them. And she said, I'm so sorry, I'm running late. Is that okay? And I wrote back, yes, with 2 exclamation points. Right? And so she comes and drops them off and leaves. And my brother that evening calls me and he says, hey man, are you mad at Diane? And I went, no, I just saw her today. She dropped her kids off. No. He goes, well, she showed me the text and she was kind of hurt because she said she was running late and you kind of yelled at her in your text. And I went, well, how do you yell? What do you mean I yelled at her? I just said yes, like kind of, yes, like I'm excited. Yes, they're coming. Yes. Be late, but I can't wait, right? Well, she took it the other way, right? So now since then, since I've been talking to Diane, guess what I don't do?
You don't use exclamation.
I don't use exclamation. Now I could say, God, Diane, you're so sensitive. Right? Quit getting those darn feathers ruffled all the time, right? I could say that, or I could say, gosh, she kind of takes it that way. I'm going to adjust and adapt, right? Now, and I really love what you said, because it's so true. All of us have the natural tendency to say, no, you come play in my sandbox. See, because the way I do things is normal. So if you want to be in the normal world, you come into my box and let's do normal together. Because your world, girl, ain't normal, right? That's not normal. And the reality is, that's not true, right? And now I'm not talking about, you know, weird people on the outliers way out here. There is some abnormality. I'm talking about your mainstream people. It's just differences. So we need to be aware of our written communication. Who is it that I'm writing this email to, right? Yeah, if I'm writing to somebody that's a very warm, friendly person, it's not a bad idea for me to start off an email and say, hey, how are you doing? How was your weekend? Hope you had a great time. Hey, real quick, a couple things, right? Because if I just go right to it and I go, I need the report by 2 today, thanks. Well, how could that sound to that person? What are they thinking? Rude. Right? Rude. Who are you to tell me what you need, right? That's what they start thinking, right? No. What's that? Yeah, you're going to get it when I'm ready to give it to you. That's right. So, gosh, just knowing the ability to identify, which is an emotional intelligence skill, the ability to identify the needs and the expectations of the people around me, right? And so the old phrase, if we could put it in the grave and bury it forever, well, this is just who I am. People can take it or leave it. Trust me, that's an easy answer. Okay? I'll leave it. Right? Anyone who says, it's just who I am, well, that shows a very low level of emotional intelligence. Because that means I'm not willing to do the flexing and the adapting to really maintain effective relationships. So, that's a great comment and question, Brandy. And I knew you weren't saying that, but I had to use it as a springboard. What else? Any other comments or questions about any of that?
On your sheet of paper, you have towards the bottom impulse control.
Yeah. How do you do that?
Coaching people how to work on it.
That's a great question. What's your name?
Kay.
Kay. All right, Kay. Great question. Kay's question was, how do you even begin impulse control? Like everyone knows, right? How many would put your hand up and say, you're right, I believe we should all be able to control our impulses? Who says that? Nobody says that? Right? Yeah, we all say that, right? But the bigger question is, how do you do that? Right? And here's how you do it, okay? You have to start with what's known as a cognitive skill, right? Cognitive means mental awareness, right? If I have cognitive capacity, I have the ability to be mentally aware and communicate. So I've got to be very conscious about something. So let's say I know, for instance, let's use an easy one. Somebody today came to lunch today and they have told themselves recently, I am not eating desserts anymore. Then I go to that table and I see this awesome cake and cookies and all that stuff and you go, oh my gosh, right? And so now you're in this internal war, right? My impulse is saying what? Eat the cake. This is a once-a-year event, right? What's the big deal? Right? Yeah, now I start rationalizing and justifying, right? And I go up there and I kind of look and I look away, right? And I look again and I look away and I can't stare at it because it's done if I stare at it, right? And so some of you ate the cake, right? And what I want to say to you is you're a horrible person. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, what you have to do is you have to, at this point, you have to say to yourself, why do I not want to eat that cake? Okay, I've got to create, see, what's the last thing say on there? Self-reflective dialogue. See, I have to learn how to communicate with myself. I have to ask myself, what's the compelling reason that I shouldn't eat the cake today? Listen, if my reason is not compelling, I'm going to eventually eat the cake, aren't I? I've got to have a compelling reason for why I'm not going to eat the cake. And I've got to learn to start being aware of it, talking to myself, communicating to myself what the compelling reasons are for what I'm trying to do, right? Maybe it's something much more serious, like I have a habit of raising my voice and lashing out. When I get hurt, right? Hurt people, and all of a sudden Kay says something to me and it hurts me, and I say, you know what, stop it! Cut it out! I hate you! Right? And I just lash out. Okay, I know that doesn't happen in here, but it can. And I have to, you know what my compelling reason would be to not do that? It would have to be something like, I don't want to lose my relationship and my friendship to Kay. I want to preserve a friendship with her and the people around me. I don't want a reputation of being somebody that people look at me and see me as an uncontrollable person, right? Now that's compelling, and I've got to talk to myself. I've got to be able to do that in a way that's constructive, because I'm not going to just be controlled, right? I've got to talk myself through it. What happens is you begin creating a new loop. It's a new neural network loop in your brain. As you talk to yourself, you begin to create new connectors, and you begin to create new habits, right? And they can be formed, and they're formed all the time. Anybody that's ever quit smoking, who's quit any kind of anything in their life, what they do is every day they're successful at not doing it. What's happening is they're creating new circuitry in their brain that's creating a new normal. And that's why the longer I go without it, the stronger that circuitry becomes, to where it doesn't have the same pull on me as it used to. Does that make sense? So I've got to learn to talk to myself to help create that circuitry in my brain. That's the beginning. And then meet with me for a year. Just kidding. That's good though. That's good, Kay.
Excellent.
What else? What's that?
Excellent cake.
Oh, she said the cake is excellent. For those of you who have not had it, it's a really, really good cake. That's right. Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Thank you for supporting everybody in here. That's great. What else? What else? Okay, so let me finish with this, because we have a little bit of time left. I want to finish with this. There are, all of this that I'm talking about is a product of your personality. Okay? And what we know is this. There are 4 dominant personality types. And everybody in this room has one of those 4. So I'm going to tell you what these 4 are, and I'm going to briefly explain them to you. Okay, and I want you to understand that within each one of these, you have your own set of weaknesses and strengths, okay? And you got to be aware of these things, and you can't get into denial about these things, okay? You got to say, you know what? In all honesty, you're right. That very well could be one of mine. So here's the first one. Now, everyone that's gone through any training with me has been through this, so this is a little bit of review for them. But for those of you who haven't, this is great kind of information for you. Okay, write down this first word, and the first dominant personality type is what we call the driver. Okay, the driver. If you're an artist, go ahead and draw a bulldozer next to the word driver. Okay, because they get stuff done. Right? They have no problem with execution, no pun intended. Okay? They are the ones that are doers. If there's something that you guys have put together and someone needs to get the ball rolling, the driver's the one you want to get the ball rolling. They are fantastic because they are about results, and they, as that one comedian says, their motto is get her done. Right? They get it done. Now, there may be bodies laying on the side of the road along the way, okay? Because the flip side of that wonderful, strong, independent, get-her-done personality is that they can come across sometimes as abrupt, rude, insensitive, harsh, unforgiving. Shall I continue? right? And the list goes on. And the reason they can come across that way is because they're so committed to getting it done that they don't have a lot of patience for people around them that don't get on board right away and get in the game. See, it drives them nuts to be around people that do not have the work ethic that they think you should have. See, so they're fantastic to be a part of a team because you will make an A on that paper. I remember in college, every time we had to do a group project, I begged and prayed that God would put a driver on our team. Because I knew that they were not going to tolerate anything less than an A, which meant I got to ride on the A, right? I'm like, yes, he's a driver, yes, just push it on over there, right? So that's the driver, man. They get it done. But if you're a driver, listen, you've got to do better at listening. You've got to take time and care and demonstrate, ready? Empathy. Okay, empathy is the ability to truly try to understand where other people are coming from. See, that's what you got to get better at. You got to create some balance. If you live with a driver and you're not a driver, it sometimes can feel like everything is on their terms. And it can feel like they're the ones that make the rules and that you walk in their disappointment when things don't happen the way they should. Okay? That's the driver. But they will never bounce a check. You'll never be in the red because of their irresponsibility. Everything will be fixed around the house. Doorknobs will be fixed, lights will be changed, plumbing will work, starters will be changed. Awesome. So you get to live with that person. So, but if you are that person, hey, chill out. All right? Back up. Do we have a driver at that table over there? Yeah? Just a joy to live with, I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
The word in my favor,
Which one?
empathy.
Oh, is that your word? Are you a driver? You're a driver. That's right. That's good. That's great. Very good self-awareness, by the way, to know that, right? 62%. Are you married? Right there. 62% of the time, people who are drivers, married people who are what we call and I'll describe them now, who are amiables. The amiables are the very kind, gentle, supportive, loyal people. I don't know if he's like that or not.
Only on Tuesday.
Only on Tuesday, yeah. That's right. The amiable, their strength is they love consensus. They like people to get along. They are the type of people that are great mediators, right? They are just perfect support members on the team. They're the classic yes person. You want to go here? Yes. You want to go there? Uh-huh. You want to do that? Definitely. Do you want to do that? Yeah. Why do you do that? Let's do what you want to do. So they're wonderful. They're the person you want to go to the coffee house with and sit down for an hour or two because it's one long conversation about you. How are you? Oh, are you doing okay? What can I do for you? Right? Oh, they're awesome. They're the ones that make you feel like you literally could climb Mount Everest because they think you're the greatest thing in the world. They're just wonderful. Flip side. They also are very sensitive. They can be overly accommodating, which means that they say yes, 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 and on the inside they may be saying no, 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 which means it's just a matter of time before they go postal, postal, postal. Okay? And the eruption hits, right? And all of a sudden, now you know what they really think, right? But then they feel bad about it and go back to their amiable side after that. I'm so sorry, I did it all wrong, right? So the amiable has to grow by learning to show up. Your voice has to be heard. You cannot be afraid of what people think. You cannot be dependent upon people's approval. See, that's their core need. Their core need is approval and relationship. And so I'm not going to say anything to you because I may jeopardize that. So I'm going to go ahead and just go along for the 7th year in a row because I don't want you to be upset with me. See, because I don't sleep at night when you're upset with me. In fact, I look at my driver husband or wife who's crashed out, like, how do you sleep? We just got into an argument, right? And you wonder, how are they sleeping when you're just tossing and turning all night because you haven't settled it yet, right? That's the wonderful amiable. Gotta love them.
I have a question.
Sure.
The drivers end up with the amiables, but do the amiables look for the drivers?
Yes, yes, and here's why. Here's why. Because all relationships begin in a stage that's called fusion. Fusion is a term psychologists use, which means it's the integration of two things that are different and give the illusion of oneness. So in other words, when they meet, the differences don't matter because they feel like it's kind of soulmate-ish, right? Like we're so complementary. Here's what happens. You go from fusion and later you hit what's called diffusion, which is when it breaks apart, right? Which is supposed to happen, by the way. So what happens is the amiable meets the driver and says something like, oh my gosh, they're wonderful. They're so determined and strong and independent-minded. I feel so secure with this person. I love them, right? Advance the tape 2 years. Oh my gosh, they drive me nuts. They're so controlling and type A and everything's got to be their way, right? Well, nothing changed. It's the same person. It's just diffusion hit. Right? So the opposites do attract in the early stage because the complementarity of it is so powerful, right? The driver loves the amiable on the front end because they look at the amiable and go, I just love someone that's so easy, they just make life so peaceful, they're just so kind to people. Advance the tape 2 years. Oh my gosh, could you take some initiative somewhere in your life? Right? Could you? And so they said, and I'm not talking about you guys, but other people, okay? So yes, the attraction is very powerful when it happens, but just know it always goes from fusion to diffusion, and then at that point is what we call the critical choice. Okay? And the critical choice, typically, and we didn't mean to go this direction, but I guess it's part of the Q&A, right, Abby? Okay. So the critical choice is learn to accept it and embrace the differences and remember what was beautiful about the differences and live with it. Or spend the rest of your life trying to change them and be in absolute misery because it will never work, right? Or number 3, I'm out, see, which is a very painful choice as well. So embrace the beautiful differences, change them for the rest of your life. We can all laugh right there. I'm out, okay? Let me give you the third one. What have we done? Driver, we've done amiable. Ready for your third one? The analytical. The analytical. Boy, they are awesome. You know why? The analytical is the one who you want writing, for instance, your compliance manual. Thorough. You do not want the fourth one that I've not described yet, writing your compliance manual. Okay? You want the analytical writing the compliance manual. Thorough, methodical, detail-oriented, information-driven. They love to take the time to process things. They are generally accurate in their descriptions of things because they've spent the time doing the due diligence of it. They take a lot of pride in being right. See? They're terrific. They're the ones they're the thinkers that really do the work that nobody here wants to do, right? They're going to take that code or those accounting rules and procedures and all these other things, and they're going to be like, yes! More procedures. Love it. That the government could give us more red tape. Yes. Because I love it. That's the aquarium that I swim in. See? Flip side. Analyticals are risk averse. They don't like to take big leaps of risk. They tend to be slower in their ability to make decisions because they're spending so much time thinking and they don't want to make the what? The wrong decision, see? They tend to be conflict avoiders because they don't like lots of emotion, and conflict is emotional by nature, so they will avoid conflict as long as possible. They can tend to be a little bit critical and judgmental. Because to them, life is black and white. There is right and there's wrong. And that's wrong. And I'm right. See? And they are this way, not that way. See? And that's that analytical type. They're great. because they're going to get her right. You give them a spreadsheet, look out. If you say, hey, would you build me a spreadsheet? Yes! Right? And it will rock. It will rock, see? But they lack spontaneity. They don't like to be impulsive. You're not going to say, hey, sweetie, let's just take off and go on vacation today. What, are you crazy? Right? No way. They would never do that. So they can kind of get the rap of being somewhat boring sometimes because they get very predictable. Right? So if you're an analytical, you've got to learn to really stretch yourself in creativity and spontaneity, take some risks. You know, basically, you know, be a human being. Just kidding. Be a fun, engaging person.
But don't you think there's sliding scales? I mean, I don't think all of us, or maybe some people are, but I don't feel like I'm always the driver.
Yeah, I know. What I'm describing is each of these in their pure form. Okay, we're all combinations of these. Okay, you do have a major though. You have a major and you have a supporting kind of a secondary trait that kind of balances you a little bit. Hopefully, unless you're the same one twice. Right? Yeah. The fourth one is what we call the expressive. Okay? Let me point out the expressive. She walked in at the very end. What is it? In the purple? Yeah. Poster child of the expressive. She comes in, she's like, woo! Let the party sit right there. Hey, listen, expressives are a blast. They're fun, they laugh, full of energy, they can light up a room when you see them, right? They love bright colors, they're just inspiring, they're motivating. Now, they can also be obnoxious if they don't rein it in, okay? But they are fun and engaging. They're the cheerleader that you want. If I'm gonna try to get something going in my company, I want some expressives on board, man. I want things. If I get them on board, guess what they're going to do for me? They're going to carry the banner, right? They're all in. See, they're awesome people to have around because they're just so engaging and fun. Now, here's the other side. You want to leave? Expressives, in their pure form, expressives get distracted very easily. Right? They can sit down and go, okay, that's it. I'm going to read this time for 10 minutes. I'm not going to get distracted. And they look down to read, and all of a sudden, here's a fly in the leg. Right? They're out of their chair. Now they're chasing that fly in the office, right? They didn't make it a minute in that book before they got distracted. They get distracted quickly, right? They are loose with details. They can tell a story and sometimes maybe make it a little bit elastic, right? There weren't, 2 guys, there were 6 guys, right? And kind of make it a bigger story, more colorful story, right? They can tend to be, they can procrastinate a lot because they just procrastinate a lot. That's the expressive. Now what's funny is the analytical and the expressive a lot of times connect. Because the expressive will see the analytical and think what?
You're awesome.
You're awesome.
Oh my gosh.
Gosh, spreadsheets in order.
You're so smart.
Yes, you're so smart, and you get I'm always in the red because I'm like kind of feeling my bank account, and you're like checking it. Right? And that's the difference, right? And so you're good for me because you provide so much structure for me, right? And I love that. You get to do things I don't want to do. And the analytical, of course, loves the expressive because you make me feel like I'm 20 again, right? You're fun and you're engaging, and I don't have to take the responsibility for talking all the time because you do it all, right? And I love that because you make it easy. Advance the tape 2 years, right? Expressive looks at the analytical and goes, could you be any less boring? Could you be any less spontaneous? Right? Come on, let's just go. Let's have some fun. Don't be such a tightwad. Spend the money. Right? The analytical looks at the expressive and says, you are the singular most irresponsible person I've ever met in my life. Right? What happened to you? The answer is nothing. That's who you met. See? It's just diffusion took effect. Right? So, driver, amiable, analytical, expressive. Each of those, in terms of self-awareness, You need to be very aware of where you fit there, very aware of what your strengths are, what you're good at, which I have no doubt you know what those are. But the flip side is, do I know that I can be excessively critical? Do I know that I can lack spontaneity? Do I know that I can be harsh with my words sometimes or my tone, right? Do I know that I can be well-intentioned but not a good person that follows through because I'm not good with details? Do I know that I can accommodate too much? I may call it caring for people around me, but that's not really what it is. It's that I don't want them to be disapproving of me. So those are the 4 styles there. Any final thoughts, comments, or questions on any of that? Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I really appreciate y'all's time today. And you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.
Stay up here.
Oh.
I'd like to thank Walter today for all of the amazing tools that you've given us and to use in our lives. We'd like to present you with a certificate of appreciation.
Oh, thank you.
And we will be making a donation on your behalf to the Dusk and Derrick Educational Trust.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for having me.